Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our second bootcamp session of the Run on Less Messy Middle series. My name is Rachel Ellenberger, and I'm the Industry Engagement Manager for the North American Council for Freight Efficiency. And I'll be the moderator for each of our bootcamp sessions this year. Next slide, please. So we would like to extend a very big thank you to ACT News, who has put in a ton of work behind the scenes to make this series possible. If you're not already a subscriber, you can use the link on this slide to subscribe. Next slide, please. And just a quick reminder that ACT is coming up soon. Be sure to register as soon as you can. Quite a few NACFE staff members are going to be there this year, so make sure that you come visit us at our booth number listed on the screen here. Come say hi. The conference is back in Anaheim this year. It's at the end of April. If you haven't registered yet, you can use the promo code on the screen to receive that registration discount as well. Next slide, please. So this is the second session of the diesel and natural gas unit. And last session, we talked about how at the end of each of these technology units, there's going to be a 2-hour workshop that's hosted by our executive director, Mike Roth. And during these workshops, we're going to be digging into what we heard during each of the unit sessions. We're going to hear from some new faces, and we're going to have a couple of breakout rooms where the attendees can discuss amongst themselves and the facilitators what they heard, what they learned, and we'll highlight all of these topics of conversation. A few quick things to note about the workshops, though. Number one, the workshops are not going to be recorded, so you have to attend them live. Number two, space for the workshops are limited. And number three, the space for the workshops are by invite only. So in order to be invited to the workshop, you have to attend at least one of the sessions in that unit. So for those of you who have logged in and are joining us live today, you will receive an invitation to the diesel natural gas workshop, and you'll need to accept that in order to access the workshop. Next slide, please. And I'd like to turn it over to Mike with a quick update from the run. Mike.
Thanks, Rachel, and hello, everybody. I'm really excited about these boot camp sessions. This one's particularly interesting. Of course, if I say this is my favorite, then I'm saying like I have a favorite son or daughter. But really looking forward to it. Great group. These guys know what they're talking about with respect to natural gas, both CNG, RNG, and maybe a little on LNG. But they are really excited about today and hearing what we're going to do. Really encourage you to join us in a month for that workshop. March 25th. So we heard a lot from people attending the boot camp in 2023 that there just wasn't, it was fun and interesting, and you heard from specialists, but it was a typical webinar online where very little interaction when you joined. So we've added 3, maybe 4 workshops to our plan this summer, and this spring and summer. And so the first one will be there on March 25th, where we'll dig into a little bit more about what we heard in these sessions and explore them more deeply. And you'll be able to, really voice your questions and thoughts on things when we break out into the session. So the NACFE team will be helping with all those breakout sessions, and really encourage you to do that. Also, we're entering the show season, so NACFE will be at ACT Expo in a while that Rachel mentioned, but also over the next couple of weeks, we'll be in Indianapolis at the Green Truck Summit Work Truck Show, and also in Nashville at the TMC over the next few weeks. So look us up. Love to shake your hands and talk about things. We call this messy middle and run on less messy middle, but the focus of this run is on long haul, both kind of traditionally what we think about long haul with over the road, but also long return to base operations, which we suggest is also long haul. If you're doing a lot of miles, to us at NACFE, that's long haul, whether you come back to the same base every night or every couple of nights, or if you're across the country in more irregular routes. So that's what we're focused on here. The NACFE team's also been really active over the last few weeks, talking to fleets who want to participate with their trucks and drivers in the actual run, which will take place in September. So these will be, best of the best out there operating diesel trucks, natural gas trucks, battery electric trucks, and hydrogen fuel cell trucks. So we expect early in April to announce who those fleets will be operating those trucks that then become the part of the run where you can follow each truck, go on a dashboard, seeing where they're going, how they're going, what their distances are, how long it's taking them to fuel or charge, all those details that are very important in the operation of all these trucks. So um, that's all I have. I just wanted to give an update. I'm in Orlando right now at the Geotab user conference called Connect, and there we'll be working with Geotab also to make sure all the data from all these trucks will be able to be presented in September. So thanks for joining today, and back to you, Rachel.
Thank you so much. So I have a quick few bits of housekeeping before we get started. Stefan, if we could advance to the next slide. I would like to thank today's session sponsor, Clean Energy. Thank you to Clean Energy for your support to help make this series possible. Next slide, please. So the quiz is going to be available online immediately after this session. And the quiz is your opportunity to test the knowledge that you've gained from the session. Once you successfully complete the quiz, you'll have the option to fill out a Google form and provide your contact information to be entered into a drawing for Run on Less Messy Middle Swag. There is a limit of 1 entry per successful quiz completion with a maximum of 9 entries. And you'll see the button to take the quiz when you go back to runonless.com and click into the page for this session. Next slide, please. Just a quick reminder that the session is being recorded. It will be posted online, available later this week. If you didn't get the chance to submit a question on the registration form and you would like to do so, please use the Q&A controls. They're in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. During the Q&A, I will be elevating your questions to our speakers, but for those questions that we don't have time to get to or that we won't be covering in this session, we are collecting all of them to build out our future content. So if there's something that you're curious about, make sure that you send in those questions. And finally, if you run into any technical difficulties, reach out to Stefan Babcock. He's with ACT News, and he will help you troubleshoot this. Next slide. So with that, we can go ahead and get started. I would like to introduce you to today's panel. Our first speaker is Matt Tomich, who is the Executive Director of Energy Vision. Matt, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to be here. I think this Run on Less session and series is just fantastic, and the timing is quite exciting. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the renewable natural gas opportunity. I know the session topic is decarbonizing with natural gas, but RNG is something we've spent the last decade plus really digging into the economics, the technology, the climate and health benefits, and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. For those of you who don't know who we are, Energy Vision is a national environmental research group, technically based in New York City, and we've spent, as I said, much of the last decade plus really digging into the technology and policy and economics around how do we accelerate the energy transition. Within that, how do we accelerate this transition off of petroleum and fossil fuels? And for many, many years, we've seen this intersection between sort of waste management sector and the transportation sector, and opportunities to take advantage of this really abundant resource in the form of organic waste and the methane that it generates to create, a really powerful tool for decarbonization and a sort of cost-effective and proven strategy to run trucks and various other applications. So we're at this nexus of lots of stakeholders, do a lot of research that informs education and outreach. And as I said at the outset, always appreciate the opportunity to engage more directly with industry, with the folks who are on the ground and having to make these decisions and be the ones to see this change happen. And the last 5 or so years, methane has become a really hot button topic in the international scientific community, and we see RNG as a very clear solution to help address the global methane challenge. Next slide, please. And as I've talked a little bit about already, we're really out here trying to push the envelope in terms of what are the cost-effective and commercial solutions that are largely underdeployed, at least in terms of overall opportunity set and ability to scale. And that's what led us to this topic of sort of waste to wheels, or the power of waste, as we've often termed it. To set a little bit more on background, we've done so much in this area going back to 2009, 2010. We hosted a national workshop in Ohio called Waste to Wheels in collaboration with the DOE Clean Cities groups. And since then have continued to be very active in engaging with waste generators, with developers and investors and fleets and other environmental groups to really help, move this from the theoretical realm to the realm of deployment. And as you'll see here, the last decade has really been emblematic of the potential to take advantage of these resources and to use this fuel to decarbonize. Next slide, please. And so this may be a little bit rudimentary for some of you, but for others, maybe not. So when we talk about renewable natural gas, it all starts with what's called biogas. And biogas is typically about 50 to 65% methane. It's the product of a process known as anaerobic digestion, essentially just microbes working in an oxygen-free environment. And whether that's at a landfill or whether that's at dedicated anaerobic digester facilities on dairy farms, hog farms, other agricultural waste streams, or more and more at municipal wastewater facilities, or even dedicated digesters to process food waste, you're producing biogas. And that biogas is a versatile energy resource. Next slide, please. And so if you go back 20, 30, 40 years in the landfill space, in the wastewater space, the norm was you have this biogas, it's pretty energy rich, you can consume it on site to generate heat and power. And there were lots of projects that did that, and there are still projects doing this. But due to sort of changing policy and other factors, more and more, there's been a trend toward taking that biogas and further refining it into what we would call renewable natural gas. Next slide, please. And so the distinction here is renewable natural gas is the upgraded form of biogas, typically 95+% methane, oftentimes closer to 98 or 99% methane. It's quote unquote pipeline quality, which means it can be injected directly into the gas grid and can be utilized for all the same things that conventional or fossil natural gas is used for. Next slide, please. And so in terms of those different applications, as you could have guessed, can be used for power generation, can be used for various industrial processes that require some amount of thermal load, as well as for heating and cooling and cooking. But it's really the transportation market and the use of RNG in medium and heavy duty vehicles that's sort of been the most exciting, and the place where we've seen the most activity over the last decade. And again, being an environmental group, the big excitement for us initially was the fact that doing this, allowed for major climate benefits, regardless of feedstock, but certainly some feedstocks like dairy manure and food waste being diverted from landfills gets not just significant climate benefits, but greater than 100% benefits in what we would call net carbon negative, which RNG is one of, if not the only fuel that has that benefit due to the fact that you're capturing lots of this methane and putting it to productive use. Next slide, please. And so this schematic is somewhat old, but gives you a sense of how this is done. You've got all variety of organic material, whether it's going to a landfill or a dedicated digester. it's processed over some amount of time, produces biogas. That biogas is upgraded or refined by removing the carbon dioxide, the moisture, and other impurities. You can then utilize it on site via on-site refueling, or more often than not, put it straight into the gas network and move it around, and get it to a growing number of fueling stations that supply natural gas, and therefore can get it directly into vehicles. And so this is not anything new. This has been happening for quite some time. Next slide, please. So I won't get into the specifics here, but a number of policies, state and federal, have made the economics of doing this quite attractive over the past decade, and that's led to a huge uptick in interest and excitement and development. And so oftentimes RNG is being offered at parity with fossil gas, which makes the economics compelling. Next slide. From a climate standpoint, you can see at the far right, there is that net carbon negative benefit, especially for RNG derived from animal manure or from food waste, which again, a big sustainability driver for some, and something that gets us quite excited about its potential. Next slide. And then I'm just giving a quick plug. I know I'm running low, Rachel, but we are about to release a new report that looks at the specific public health benefits of not just RNG, but also RD and battery electric. And that will be coming out in the next week, so I'll be sure to share that. Won't get into the specifics here, but we are excited about what we found and digging into a various number of data sets, and the real benefit of RNG comes out as among the best options economically, environmentally, and otherwise. Next slide, and I'm almost done. I know others are going to touch on this. We've seen a greater than 10-fold increase in the number of projects essentially in the last decade due to those favorable economics. So it's growing quickly. Next slide. And to wrap things up, we're really in the early innings here, at least in terms of both RNG production potential as well as demand side. But I would say we're in maybe the second inning of a 9-inning game in terms of where we are in capturing these different feedstocks and capturing this methane and putting it to productive use. So ample untapped opportunity that will continue to proceed, and certainly growing fleet demand is a major factor and would be a big driver in incentivizing additional production and capture of this methane. So with that, I believe I've run through 12 years in 10 minutes and look forward to Q&A and the other presenters. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Matt. And as Matt had mentioned, Energy Vision is coming out with that report here soon. As soon as that is published, we are going to have a link to it through the session page on runonless.com. So if you're curious about the report, make sure that you come back to Run on Less as well. We'll have that link there. So with that, we're going to turn it over to Dan Depler, who is the Vice President of Maintenance for Paper Transport. Dan, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. And we can get started with the first next slide here, actually. In the industry, PTI has become known as the natural gas fleet. And I would agree with what Matt said. We're really in the second inning of this, and what will be a 9-inning game for sure. We've led the industry, but it still only represents 10% of our fleet right now. And I included this slide that NACFE has put together just to draw out really what the challenges are. Diesel is a formidable competitor when we look at coming up with alternative powertrains or alternative fuels to compete with diesel. Diesel's very mature. The infrastructure has been built for 70 years. We've got unlimited range and route flexibility, so it helps us solve, customer issues. And at the end of the day, it's relatively inexpensive. But when we got into CNG over 15 years ago, it was really, we took a pragmatic approach and said, hey, we understand that batteries out there, but we really need to solve our customers' problems. And when we looked at what CNG offered at that time, that was the closest to becoming diesel parity from a cost standpoint. And that's why we began down this path. And so when we look at, being in this messy middle, and we're in the, call it the second inning, we still are very enthusiastic about natural gas in general, and specifically now with all of the RNG coming online, it starts to make a lot of additional solutions for our customers more feasible. And if we could go to the next slide, please. We focus on three main areas. Basically CNG is methane, and the three main sources of methane that we are trying to get after, or the three main sources that are out there, surprisingly enough, wetlands is a very high source of it. But then behind that, you have landfills and you have dairy. And luckily with the remaining two, there are systems to capture that methane and use it for transportation. So, with methane is 80 times worse than releasing carbon into the atmosphere. And so it's important for methane to be converted into carbon through burning it. But what we can do with RNG and putting it into natural gas vehicles is actually get some utility out of that by moving transportation. If you could go to the next slide, please. Matt, kind of covered this, but what I wanted to just call out is the volume of RNG projects that are out there right now. It does touch every single state. Where you're going to see most of that activity is in states where there are dairy farms. And so you think California, Texas, Wisconsin, Michigan, New York, all of these states have sizable opportunities to get out and capture some of that RNG. And if we could go to the next slide, please. Similar to what Matt said, we've seen the RNG that has come online has doubled just in the last 5 years. And while this doesn't give us the complete ability to eliminate diesel, we're very excited about how many projects are coming online in the next few years. And we believe RNG volume out there is going to double again in 10 years. And so it gives us a really good solution for our customers that can meet the range issues and can also help them with their scope 3 emissions. And if we go to the next slide, please. I want to spend a little bit of time just talking about PTI's history with natural gas. We've been in it for over 15 years now. We're approaching 80 million miles, which has displaced over 12 million gallons. Where we've found solutions that work are in these, Mike had kind of referenced this, in these long haul return to base type operations. Those are perfect fits for CNG because we can invest in that infrastructure, get the stations built, and get plenty of miles, and the customers can get all of their sustainability benefits from that. Beyond that, we also look at our drayage fleets. When you couple this with intermodal, you can build out a really sustainable solution for your customers. And beyond that, we do have long haul applications as well, where we're looking at the public infrastructure that's out there, and we're piecing all of those stations together and creating long haul applications for this. Excited to announce within a couple of weeks, we're starting up business that's going to run from Texas all the way to Pennsylvania. And so it is out there, it is an option, and it is available for long haul as well as some of the return to base type freight. That being said, the economics do have to work. And throughout our 15 years of experience with CNG, we've seen that break-even point be as low as 200,000 miles, where it's more cost advantageous to run CNG instead of diesel. And we've also been in times kind of like we're in now, where diesel is still less expensive than running natural gas. but that does change over the life of the equipment. Right now, we've got diesel prices hovering around 360 to 370. That does make diesel a little bit less expensive, but once that number starts to move up towards 4, we get to a closer to cost parity, and it gives us, again, just that ability to solve customer sustainability problems. Sometimes it may be at a little bit of a premium, and sometimes it may be at a little bit of a cost savings. And as a dedicated provider, we will take on some of that risk, but we work with our customers, and in some instances, our customers will take on that risk as well. But it does give us that option. If we could go to the next slide, please. And the last slide I wanted to talk about is, just as a fleet, we're always looking at ways to provide sustainable solution. And so even as we move outside of RNG or CNG, what we look for in a fleet, or what we do to kind of advance that, first and foremost, it comes down to our drivers that are operating the trucks. Our fleet has the richest MPG bonus program for drivers that I've seen from any fleet. We want to pay our drivers for being good stewards of their truck and being good stewards of MPG while they're out there driving. They still have a 30% factor on how good that truck performs from an MPG standpoint, or how poor it performs. And over the course of the year, that can mean over $5,000 a truck per year. So our decision is really, we would rather pay the drivers and have them incented to be very good stewards of sustainability, and rather than pollute the environment. We also continue to invest in very new equipment so that we're running the most efficient trucks that are out there. We stay well under 3 years old so that we can maximize our MPG. And then as a transportation provider, we're obviously always looking at our empty miles and reducing that as a way to be sustainable and eliminate waste out. And as you can see, with some of our awards, we routinely get recognition from Smartway, HDT Green Fleets. We're obviously a member of NACV, Wisconsin Clean Cities. All of this in an effort to just keep sustainability as a common thread throughout our fleet and keep providing those solutions for our customers. Thanks, Rachel.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dan. Next on our list here, we have Dave King, who's the product manager for the on-highway natural gas engine portfolio with Cummins. Dave, thanks so much for joining us today. I'll hand it over to you.
Hey, thanks, Rachel. Hey, thanks for having me today. And if you go to the next slide, I'm going to talk about why is Cummins so bullish on natural gas. So, there's really kind of four key points, right? The reliability and durability of the technology, the scalability of the technology, the viability, and the sustainability. I know we're talking a lot about the sustainability portion of this, decarbonizing transportation. Cummins has been in the natural gas business for over 30 years for the on-highway market. And just now with the launch of the X15N late last year, we now have a product that has the power, torque, and performance for the heavy-duty truck market. And that's all backed by the Cummins network for sales and service, whether it's a dealer network or the Cummins sales and service organization. And we spent a lot of time bringing that 30 years of knowledge to the product for the X15N. It's improvements in fuel economy, improvements in service intervals to lengthen it out to get more to the levels that fleets are looking for, and really to bring the hardware and reliability improvements to the product that we've learned over many of years. So, natural gas, it's viable. We now have the range with the packaging and the lightweighting of CNG tank cylinders. You can now package enough fuel on board to easily get 700 to 800 miles, and then with more of range, and then add some additional tanks and get well over 1,000-mile range. So now not only do we have performance, we have fuel and range for the market segment that we're talking about. right? And then you've got the ability with natural gas. When we think about this compared to other decarbonization technologies, is we can slip in with the operation, the way a diesel fleet runs today. You can do multi-shift operation. You can slip seat a truck. Uh, as I think Dan referred to it, is right the stable cost of natural gas. And diesel's got a lot of variation. So one day it's high, one day it's low. You've got kind of a known cost with your natural gas. It's pretty steady. And you know, when I talk about the history and the number of years Cummins has been in this business, there's over 100,000 natural gas heavy duty vehicles, or class 6, 7, 8, operating today with Cummins engines. So, you know, we have a scalable technology, and you know, back to viability, it's a 1-to-1. You don't need 2 trucks for every one. And by the way, 2 trucks is 2 drivers. So really gets to a technology that fits right in. And then just the decarbonization capability with renewable natural gas and all the different projects and supply coming on board to really, you know, bring the lowest NOx, the lowest greenhouse gas solution to the marketplace. If you go to the next slide, please. When I think about where the X15N fits in, or where natural gas engines overall fit in, we cover market segments from bus and medium duty truck, and now clear out to line haul sleeper trucks with the X15N. So this just sort of overlays what products and what market segments our products tend to fit into, and the X15N being the target applications to pick up everywhere from heavy vocational refuse trucks out to the regional haul and line haul sleeper markets. And that we can do that by having, again, the range, the capability, the performance, clear up to 500 to 1850 foot-pounds of torque. So we really think we're ready for the market. We're starting to see adoption of the product, not only by traditional natural gas or ISX12N users, but we're seeing fleets start adopting and getting into natural gas that have been traditional diesel customers. Maybe customers that they tried the ISX12N 400, 1450 just wasn't enough for their operation. That's not a typical LTL or line haul carrier. So now we have that capability, and so we've brought a lot of the attributes that customers are expecting in that market segment to the market. If you go to the next slide, through the development of this product and bringing what the customers really want, what the market wants, we focused on kind of these 4 segments: fuel efficiency, maintenance, regulatory, obviously, and then reliability. So what you can see is each of these attributes are categorized here as to what's really focused on it. So it's a completely new cylinder block at 15 liters, light-weighted out. So we've taken weight out of the product. The X15N is lighter than the 12 liter by about 50 pounds. We've improved the cylinder head. It's a natural gas specific cylinder head. So these are things we've learned over the years, getting the right cooling around the combustion phase and the spark plugs, improving the power cylinder, to improving the fuel system. So we've had kind of a clean sheet to go here. So we've really brought a lot, but we've carried some things forward as well. It's still a passive after treatment system, so a 3-way catalyst, so no DEF, no regenerations, things that it's kind of just forget about it. It's just back there, which is really great. And so we've been able to extend service intervals with cooler plugs, a new ignition system, fuel control with a new fuel system, and then we package that with our Cummins Clean Fuels technology fuel delivery system. If you go to the next slide, please. So just a quick look at how the power and torque of the X15N compares to diesel. So this is the number one rating, 500 1850. You can see with the X15 productivity and the efficiency series, the two gray lines, we align up very, very well with those, really delivering that flat, broad torque back at the low speed that the Class 8 market really expects and wants. And then, but also having that wide power curve and range and running up to a governor brake at 1900 RPM. So you got a lot of versatility. And then we couple that with being integrated with the Endurant HDN, so automated manual transmissions, as well as the automatic transmissions from Allison. Next slide. In this product, we've been developing this platform for 10 years. And so we launched natural gas 15-liter product outside of North America first. And so we've been in production for about 2.5, 3 years. And so now there's about 58,000 of these engines, production engines, in service globally, with about 7.3 billion with a B miles aggregated across all those. So really great reliability development there by having all this experience. And then if you go to the next slide, you'll see from a North America perspective, through the program to tailor the product for North America, we have 2.2 million miles plus on our 24 field test units over various applications, running everywhere from Southern California up to Canada and all points in between. So high altitude, high heat, cold weather. We've really been putting it through. And you can see some examples of the field test. If you go to the next slide, please. And I want to at least kind of close with, Cummins is looking at not just the solution as an engine, but we have an integrated powertrain, whether it's the X15 natural gas engine to Endurant transmissions, to the drive lines, axles, brake systems, and the natural gas fuel delivery system that you see there pictured behind the cab on this. So when you think about the solutions for the heavy duty market, Cummins integrated powertrain is here. Hey, thanks, Rachel.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dave. And I'm going to pass it to our final speaker of the day. We are welcoming Marty Tufte, who is the Corporate Fleet Manager for WM. Marty, thanks so much for joining us. I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Mike, for having me. I'll start out with appreciate everybody's attendance today. Thank you for indulging me for 10 minutes or so, and we'll jump right in. Next slide. I'm going to walk you through our CNG journey, overall CNG fleet, our RNG statistics, talk a little bit about emissions and a little bit about our infrastructure, and then what can fleets do today in my humble opinion. Next slide. So here's our journey. We started back in 1995 with natural gas. We did look at RNG, still have some RNG or LNG, still have some of those trucks running today. Predominantly we're CNG today, and you'll see examples of that all the way up until today. Next slide, please. Current stats in our fleet at a glance is we're over 13,000 Class 8 heavy natural gas vehicles. We have designed, built, own, and operate and maintain 213 fueling stations. 25 of those are open to the public. We displaced in 2024 110 million gallons of diesel. We've trained over 2,000 technicians and over 10,000 drivers. We've invested over $4 billion. And we have 6,000 plus trucks running under the NOx level of the 2027 emissions, and have had since running those coming out in 2018. We are working on being 100% RNG in our fleet, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Our goal is by 26 that every gallon that we burn in our fleet, we will have produced from one of our landfills, and we estimate that to be about 150 million DGE a year. Next slide, please. As far as our RNG activities from our ARM, our WMRE, division of businesses. We are currently operating 7 RNG facilities with a volume of about, I always convert it to DGE, diesel gallon equivalent, around 40 million DGE. We have 17 facilities in construction. As you've seen some of the other previous presenters talk about the expanded growth, have those in construction by 2026. Our anticipated production of RNG at that point will be over 200 million DGE. With a carbon intensity score of minus 126 on average. And that's just some pictures of some of the plants that we are have up and running currently. Next slide. Lowering emissions. This is a slide that I'm extremely proud of. When you look at NOx and where we operate, I alluded to this earlier with 0.035 hanging out there right now, and regulatory wise, we'll see where all of that stuff goes. Running the natural gas engines that we have since 2018, 5,000 to 6,000 of those running at the 20 milligrams level certainly reduces our carbon intensity per 1,000 miles driven. Next slide. I always put this slide in, and Dave, thank you. I stole this from you guys many years ago. If you look at our history, and I always think it's very important for transportation to understand that, back in 1985, if you took the emissions that trucks were putting out at that point, 54 trucks in 1985, with the 2018 natural gas standard that we run equals 1,080 trucks producing the same amount of emissions. It's a pretty staggering slide if you think about it. Next slide, please. This one, I'm also the current chairman of the Transport Project, advocating the use of renewable gaseous fuels for transportation in the United States and Canada. If you look at this slide and you compare to conventional means of transportation and the metric tons of emissions produced, you take diesel at 100 and using the calculations that are in this slide and taking into account the metric tons produced with natural gas running on RNG and put those together, you've got a difference in a typical line haul truck of 366 metric tons per year. That is a dramatic difference, and our previous presenters have pointed this out and have echoed that. And then I just put on there, if BEV is a little higher than zero, and again, we are agnostic, but this is a transport project slide from the WM perspective. So I put where we are on that because we burn a little less fuel per year than an average line haul truck. And where our metric tons fall into that versus our diesel fleet. Next slide, please. Just some quick pictures of how we slow fill our trucks with our overhead truss system. This also provides some really great lighting we've incorporated into this for our drivers to do proper pre and post trip inspections, thereby putting the safest fleet on the road that we possibly can. Next slide, please. Also, in our maintenance shops, over 200 of those, we have developed our own natural gas sensor safety system and have made those online, and so we can see all of those live. So we make sure that safety is always first at WM, and we are constantly monitoring, like I said, in a live fashion, all of the sensors that keep our employees safe every day. And so we have a complete protocol. If something a sensor goes out of calibration or whatever, we immediately know that online. We have people dispatched to help them secure the parts, diagnose the issue, and get the system back up and running. Next slide, please. So wrapping that all up, if you're a fleet on this call in various stages, I kind of put those into 3 groups for everybody. If you've not started yet, my humble recommendation is that you run some pilots, look at what your retail fueling options are that are close to your operations that work or close to your routes. I would also encourage you, if you're not a member of the Transport Project, the website is right there. We have a boatload of information on that website for our members, helping them through everything from safety standards to speccing trucks to training technicians to training drivers and all of the above. If you're in the pilot stage, my recommendation is you get your specifications right and expand. Research your fueling options versus retail. Maybe you want to look at building your own station, as we have done. And then also research your maintenance support options. Those are hugely important to a successful natural gas fleet. You can take it from us. Like I've said, we've got over 13,000 of them running. It is a cornerstone of the success of our program. And if it is your current strategy, from a sustainability standpoint or sustainment standpoint, safety first, that's our motto. We train technicians, drivers, as I've talked about in our previous slides, and then fine tuning your maintenance program so you know exactly how those engines are going to perform in your duty cycle, and it does make a difference. And so you would want to tailor that specifically to how you use the engine. And with that, Rachel, I will turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Marty. Thanks for wrapping us up here. And I'd like to call all of our speakers back so that we can have a quick Q&A. We had a couple of questions that were submitted before the session through registration. We also had a couple of questions that were submitted during the session. So appreciate everybody who was actively participating here. So as everybody was talking, I was trying to group our questions into two general categories. We have questions about the fuel, we have questions about the equipment. The first question that I want to make sure that we get to is, so we talked about CNG, we talked about RNG. Somebody is asking about whether or not this group considers LNG to be a viable solution for long-haul transportation specifically. So between paper transport, WM, if you guys have thoughts, or Matt, Dave, feel free to jump in as well.
Yeah, I think I can take that one. When we originally looked at CNG versus LNG, the most compelling reason for us to go CNG versus LNG was really the cost of transporting LNG. We just felt like pipeline economics are always going to win over trucking economics. And over time, I think that's why you've seen a greater adoption in CNG and very specific use cases where LNG might be the right solution. And, obviously marine is one of those areas, but in over the road trucking, even though it provides range ability, I don't think LNG is the long-term solution due to the cost of transporting it.
And I would certainly echo those comments that Dan made. And again, we've talked about this in the past, is the advancement of the fuel systems, carbon fiber, lightening those up, capacity, ability to use the majority of the fuel in those fuel systems and not leaving stranded fuel, giving you increased range, has also been a leading factor.
Great. One question that I had here was, so when we talk about converting methane to a vehicle fuel, we sometimes talk about the leakage as well, right? And so because methane is a significant greenhouse gas, this question says when it leaks, it's damaging. Propane, on the other hand, is not. Said that there are questions about, or the reasons why propane is not a bigger part of the clean transportation conversation for long haul. Do you guys have thoughts about that, or between WM and paper transport? Did you guys explore those options at all?
We did. It just comes down to the energy density and the amount of fuel you can put on board for the weight. Propane versus compressing it. Propane is compressed, I think, to 60 to 100 psi, where we've got CNG compressed down to 3,600 psi. We're getting much more on board that's giving us that range.
And again, Rachel, I would agree with that as well as that is one of the reasons that we transitioned over to CNG is to reduce any potential for leaks. We have a company policy that we don't vent to atmosphere. We have put defuel capability on all of our stations, and we recycle that fuel back in and don't let it escape to atmosphere. There's also plenty of studies out there. There's been all kinds of leak studies done around that and what it really looks like. I'm not going to quote any of those. Those are out there for anybody that wanted to do some research around that. But everything that I have seen, it has been certainly minimal.
Great. That sounds great. This next question for Matt, this is for you. So somebody is curious about what is the relative price in percentage above of the average RNG versus pipeline natural gas. Is there a difference in cost that we can quantify for folks here?
Sure. I mean, it's a great question, an important question. I think there's no doubt that regardless of feedstock that's being used, whether it's landfill, wastewater, food waste, or agricultural manure residue, the cost to produce RNG is higher, sometimes significantly higher than the cost of fossil. And that's the reality. I think the more important question and issue at hand here from a fleet perspective is, what is the relative cost at the pump? And due to policy, state and federal, and the associated incentives, RNG is being offered almost always at parity or very close to parity with fossil. And that's equating to, on average, somewhere in the range of $1 to $1.50 a gallon discount to diesel based on today's pricing. Sometimes even greater discounts are available, if you're running a significant volume and have, a big fleet footprint. So I think that ultimately is what's most relevant, I would say, to this audience. And certainly those incentives are critical to enabling folks to be able to offer it at a price that makes the economics work.
Mm-hmm. I gotcha. My next question is going to be more about the equipment. And Dave, I have a two-part question here for you. The first one here is that in the past, Cummins projected that there was going to be about a 10 to 15% adoption of the heavy-duty X15 engine by 2030. How is it looking for you guys now? Are you seeing more? Are you seeing less? Is that projection still accurate? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that projection, it's still hard to nail down. We're starting at about a 2% of the market today, natural gas for the Class 8 market. And as we bring product that has more capability, that will help us grow that segment. And really, there's kind of two customers that will help with that adoption, right? There's the decarbonization effort and scope emission reduction. So there's customers that are transitioning to natural gas or renewable natural gas for those reasons. But then there's the total cost of ownership, or just the economics of it. And there's customers that move that direction. I think everybody here talked about the lower cost of fuel for natural gas. As a general rule, you have some volatility in diesel. And so fuel prices have some impact on that. So, but as a general rule, you know what you're going to be paying for natural gas on a much longer scale. So we'll see that adoption click up, and you've heard some of even our CEO talk about 8%. So we're seeing it grow. There are things that will move in our favor for natural gas adoption, but diesel's gotten so good. It's just a fact is, right, the advances to bring the emissions down and the fuel economy up of diesel. So, that's a great thing for the industry as a whole. But the two factors of, low cost operation for natural gas and then the decarbonization factor will help drive it, even with the great advancements of diesel.
Mm-hmm. The second part of this question here, somebody's curious as to if you're able to share with us which truck OEMs will be offering the X15N in 2025.
Sure, I guess I'll take that one. I don't think you probably targeted me for that one.
Yes.
So both Kenworth and Peterbilt launched last year with the X15N, and Freightliner has announced availability of the X15N later this year. And so that's what I can say, because that's in the public domain.
Mm-hmm.
And so, which is great. Lots of different types of vehicles within their model ranges, which will cover all the different market segment needs. So that's we're excited about that. 25 is going to be a big year.
Yeah, that's great. My next question here, I think we have time for maybe one more. Dan and Marty, this one is for you two. So somebody is curious about what are some actionable items, driver behaviors that you guys are looking to increase the efficiency of your operations in addition to running RNG?
I can jump in first. First and foremost, for any truck, for us, it's always idling. And so those are actions that we are constantly looking at. It's no surprise in this industry. We have a lot of new people come to this industry. And so that training challenge is always there, that we've got to stay after idle and keep idle percents down. So that's one of the actions we take.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We've had 5-minute idle shutdown for many years in our spec. Also, as I stated before, training the drivers on exactly driving a diesel truck versus driving a natural gas truck, it is different. We put together training aids for them on how to drive the truck differently than a diesel. We do get rave reviews on natural gas trucks from drivers, and not my quotes, theirs, is I don't smell like diesel when I come home at the end of the day, and my wife doesn't yell at me. The truck is much more quiet. We really like that piece of it. I can actually hear the air compressor on the truck run now. Those are just some of the anecdotal comments that I get from drivers, but really no dissatisfaction there at all. And fueling for us, we predominantly slow fill, so it's click and go for them. They don't have to wait in line for fuel. So.
Awesome. Well, we have about a minute and a half left, so I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up here. Stefan, if you could click to our last slide. This is the end of our second bootcamp session, but we'll be meeting here again in 2 weeks. We're talking about diesel and natural gas infrastructure, so be sure to tune in then. Remember to go back to the landing page of this session on runonless.com to take the quiz. And accept the invitation for the workshop when you see that come through as well. Here are our social media handles. If you haven't connected with us on social media, be sure to do so. And we genuinely appreciate the time that you've spent with us here today. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we hope to see you in the next one. And thank you to our speakers as well. Thanks for sharing your time and expertise with us today.
Thank you.